Hey guys, tonight we're diving deep into the surprisingly extensive, often overlooked, and frankly a bit soggy world of Roman public baths. Imagine it. You're standing on ancient cobblestones, the air thick with the scent of olive oil, sweat, and something vaguely floral mixed with the ever-present hum of hundreds of voices echoing off monumental marble walls. You can almost feel the humid air clinging to your skin, the distant splashes from an unseen pool, and the rhythmic thump-thump of a massage in progress. This isn't just about getting clean. It's about spending your entire afternoon, every afternoon, in a place that's part gym, part spa, part community centre, and part, well, you'll see. You probably won't survive this level of detailed immersion without drifting off. You've probably seen pictures of Roman ruins, the grand arches and crumbling columns, and maybe thought, oh, they had baths, cute. But what you're about to discover is an entire ecosystem, a daily ritual so ingrained in Roman life that missing it would be like missing your morning coffee and your evening Netflix binge combined. It was the place to be, to see, and most importantly, to be seen. You'll soon understand why the concept of a quick shower would have baffled them completely. The public bath wasn't a pit stop, it was the destination. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Seriously, if you're not into ancient hygiene and sprawling social complexes, no hard feelings. But if you're ready for a journey back in time, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you in the comments below. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You take your first hesitant step through the grand entrance of the Baths of Caracalla, or perhaps it's the Baths of Diocletian, doesn't really matter which, because they all offered a similar, all-encompassing experience. The sheer scale is immediately overwhelming. Sunlight streams through massive arched windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the humid air. The scent is stronger here, a heady mix of old stone, damp earth, and human activity. You hear the distant shouts of men exercising, the murmur of conversations, and the persistent sloshing of water. It's not a quiet place, not by a long shot. This isn't some quaint little spa. This is a multi-story, multi-room labyrinth designed for thousands. Historians still argue whether the initial purpose was primarily hygienic or social. But what's clear is that it became both, intertwined like the elaborate mosaic patterns underfoot. You push past a group of men arguing animatedly about a chariot race, their togas rustling, and you realize you've just stepped into the beating heart of Roman daily life. This is where the boring history gets interesting. You've just entered, and the first thing you notice is that it's surprisingly early, at least by modern standards. For many Romans, especially those with any ambition, the day at the baths didn't begin at a leisurely midday stroll. Oh no, you'd find a significant number of patrons arriving shortly after dawn. Imagine the sun barely peeking over the 7 hills of Rome, and you, a Roman citizen of some standing, are already heading towards the grand marble edifice. Why so early, you ask? Because this wasn't just about the physical cleansing, it was about laying the groundwork for your entire social and business day. The morning ritual often began not with a dip, but with a bit of a workout. Before the main crowds descended, the palaestra, the open-air exercise grounds attached to the baths, would start to hum with activity. You might see a group of older men engaging in some light ball games, their movements surprisingly agile for their years, considering the lack of modern athletic shoes. Or perhaps a younger man eager to impress, would be throwing a discus, the heavy, flat disc, arcing through the crisp morning air before thudding into the dirt. It's a far cry from your morning latte and news scroll, isn't it? You're expected to be active, to show a certain vigour before you even think about soaking. This was partly for health, partly for display, and partly to work up a decent sweat before you even hit the warm rooms. Think about it. Waking up before the roosters, getting dressed in your toga, which, let's be honest, wasn't exactly loungewear, and trudging through dimly lit streets to pump some iron, or rather, throw some heavy balls. It's a commitment. This early start also allowed for more serious business discussions to take place in a relatively quieter environment before the full cacophony of the afternoon descended. You'd see senators and merchants engaging in hushed conversations, deals being struck over a friendly game of catch. It was truly a multi-purpose venue. Historians still argue whether the palaestra was always the first stop for all bathers, or if some preferred a gentler entry into their bath routine, heading straight for the tepidarium. Either way, the early hours were definitely prime time for those who valued both their physical well-being and their social standing. You might even spot a philosopher, still half asleep, attempting to outwit a friend in a game of checkers, using pebbles as pieces. It was a proper wake-up call, in every sense of the phrase, preparing both body and mind for the long day ahead, or, more accurately, the long afternoon at the baths. With the sun climbing higher, the palaestra is now buzzing with even more energy. You find yourself navigating around groups of men, some surprisingly fit, others, well, let's just say they're more enthusiastic than athletic. It's an outdoor gymnasium, essentially, and the Romans took their pre-bath workout seriously, or at least made a show of it. You see men wrestling, their oiled bodies glistening in the sunlight, grappling with surprising intensity. It's not just a casual grapple. There are actual stakes involved, bragging rights, or perhaps a small wager on the outcome. The grunts and thuds of bodies hitting the dirt floor are a constant backdrop. Then there are the ball games. Forget your structured team sports. This is more akin to chaotic dodgeball or a very aggressive game of catch. One popular game involved a small, hard ball, often stuffed with hair or feathers, which was thrown with considerable force. Imagine trying to catch that with bare hands. You see a particularly portly gentleman, red-faced and puffing, attempting to swat at a ball with a stick, looking less like an athlete and more like he's trying to shoo away a persistent fly. It's genuinely amusing, in a glad it's not me kind of way. This wasn't about competitive sports in the modern sense. It was about building up a sweat, getting the blood flowing, and demonstrating a certain level of physical prowess, or at least the attempt at it. You might also spot more formal exercises, like lifting weights, often just heavy stones or lead dumbbells, or even shadow boxing. The air is thick with the dust kicked up by scurrying feet and the pungent smell of sweat. It's quite the sensory experience. This vigorous activity served a dual purpose. It was good for health, or so they believed, and it prepared the body for the subsequent oiling and scraping. Think of it as the Roman equivalent of a pre-workout shake, except instead of a shake, you get a good old-fashioned wrestling match. Historians still argue whether these exercises were genuinely effective for long-term health, or merely a cultural ritual to justify spending hours in the baths. Regardless, the palaestra was a vibrant, noisy space, a place where social hierarchies could temporarily blur on the wrestling mat, and where you might occasionally get clipped by a stray ball if you weren't paying attention. It was the perfect preamble to the core bathing experience, ensuring you were thoroughly warmed up and ready for what came next. Having worked up a respectable sweat in the palaestra, you now turn your attention towards the main bath complex itself. The transition is gradual, almost like a carefully choreographed sequence. Your first stop, after perhaps a quick rinse of the most obvious dirt, is the apodyterium. This is the changing room, and it's less a private cubicle experience and more of a grand, bustling hall. Imagine a public locker room, but without the lockers. You're looking for an available niche or hook on the wall to hang your toga and any other belongings. It's not exactly secure, so if you had valuables, you probably brought a slave to watch them, or just hoped for the best. Petty theft was apparently a common complaint in Roman baths, so keep an eye on your sandals. The air here is already warmer, a gentle prelude to the heat ahead. The sounds shift too, from the shouts of the palaestra to a more subdued murmur of conversations, the rustle of clothes, and the occasional clink of an oil flask. You start to undress, feeling a slight vulnerability as you shed your outer garments, exposing skin that will soon be glistening with oil and sweat. There's a subtle awkwardness, perhaps, as you navigate this public undressing, but everyone else is doing it too, so you quickly adapt. From the apodyterium, you move into the tepidarium. As the name suggests, this is the warm room. It's not hot enough to make you sweat profusely, but just warm enough to prepare your body for the intense heat of the next chamber. The air is pleasantly humid, a soft embrace after the cooler outdoor air. You can feel your muscles beginning to relax, the lingering tension from your workout starting to melt away. This room is often beautifully decorated, with mosaics and frescoes adorning the walls and ceiling, making it a visually pleasing space to linger. You might recline on a marble bench, chatting quietly with friends, or simply sitting in contemplative silence, enjoying the gentle warmth. It's a space for transition, for your body to acclimate, and for your mind to unwind before the main event. Historians still argue whether the tepidarium was primarily for acclimatization or also served as a social lounge, given its comfortable temperature. Whatever its primary function, you feel the day's worries beginning to dissipate, replaced by a growing sense of anticipation for the truly steamy experience that awaits you just beyond the archway. It's like the gentle warm-up before diving into the deep end of a very hot pool. Now, you've reached the heart of the Roman bathing experience, the caldarium. As you step through the doorway, a wave of intense, moist heat washes over you, instantly fogging your vision. This is the hot room, the steam room, the place where you truly begin to sweat. The air is thick, humid, and heavy, with the scent of hot water and the lingering aroma of various oils. It's a bit like walking into a tropical greenhouse, but instead of plants, you're surrounded by other Romans, all glistening with sweat. The floor and walls are warm to the touch, and often there's a large, steaming pool or alveus filled with hot water, inviting you to immerse yourself. You find a spot to sit on one of the marble benches that line the walls, and within moments, rivulets of sweat begin to trickle down your skin. It feels both oppressive and incredibly liberating, as if every pore in your body is opening up. The conversations here are often more subdued, hushed tones replacing the earlier chatter, as everyone is focused on enduring or enjoying the heat. Some people are simply sitting, eyes closed, letting the warmth penetrate their bones. Others are more active, rubbing themselves with oil, preparing for the next stage. It's not uncommon to see a few groans as the heat intensifies its grip. You might even catch someone muttering about the cala, the heat, being particularly aggressive today. The caldarium was heated by the ingenious hypercourse system, which you'll learn more about later, but for now, just appreciate the radiating warmth from the floor and walls. This continuous heat ensured that the room remained a veritable sauna, essential for opening the pores and facilitating thorough cleansing. Historians still argue whether the Romans understood the specific physiological benefits of sweating beyond the general idea of purging impurities. What's certain is that it was considered crucial. You might feel a little lightheaded at first, but you quickly adjust, finding a rhythm in the heat. It's a communal experience in the truest sense. There's no hiding in a corner here. You're all in this steamy, sweaty adventure together, sharing the heat, the smells, and the quiet endurance. It's surprisingly peaceful once you surrender to it, like a gentle, all-encompassing embrace. Just try not to slide off the bench from all the perspiration. After a good long soak and sweat in the caldarium, your skin feeling thoroughly cleansed, or at least incredibly sweaty, it's time for the truly iconic Roman bathing practice, the strigil. You've probably seen images of these curved bronze or iron implements, but witnessing it in action, or rather experiencing it yourself, is something else entirely. You pick up a small flask of olive oil, pure, unscented, or perhaps infused with a subtle fragrance, and slather it liberally over your body. The oil mixes with the sweat and loosened dirt on your skin, creating a kind of grimy paste. It feels, well, a bit odd, like you're basting yourself for some ancient human-sized oven. Now comes the fun part. You might do this yourself, if you're particularly dexterous, or more commonly, you'd have a slave or a professional attendant, a strigilator, do it for you. You lie back, or simply stand, as the strigilator takes the curved metal scraper and, with firm, deliberate strokes, scrapes away the oil, sweat, and dirt from your skin. It sounds a bit barbaric, doesn't it? And yes, it can be a little uncomfortable at first, a slight scratching sensation, but it's remarkably effective. You watch as greyish-brown ribbons of gunk are peeled away, leaving your skin feeling surprisingly smooth and clean beneath. It's like a very aggressive, very public exfoliation. It's not just about cleanliness, it's also a form of massage, stimulating circulation and removing dead skin cells. The scraping sound, a soft shwip-shwip, becomes part of the ambient noise of the caldarium or a slightly cooler adjacent room. You might see men comparing the amount of gunk removed, almost a point of pride in how much impurities they've managed to purge. Historians still argue whether the strigil was used on every part of the body with equal fervour, or if certain areas were given more attention. One quirky tidbit: some wealthy Romans would bottle the scraped, tough gunk, believing it had medicinal or even cosmetic properties. Yes, you heard that right. Imagine trying to sell that on Amazon today. Authentic Roman bather's grime for a radiant glow. It's a uniquely Roman way of achieving cleanliness, a far cry from a quick shower and a bar of soap. You feel strangely refreshed, if a little scraped, as you prepare for the next stage of your ancient spa day. Having been thoroughly oiled and scraped, your skin now tingling and feeling remarkably clean, you're ready for the ultimate contrast, the frigidarium. This is the cold plunge, and it's exactly what it sounds like. You approach a large, often open air, or at least very well ventilated pool, filled with refreshingly cold water. After the oppressive heat of the caldarium and the somewhat abrasive experience of the strigil, the thought of plunging into icy water might seem daunting. And honestly, it is. You take a deep breath, perhaps eyeing the other Romans who are either bravely cannonballing in or gingerly dipping a toe, letting out small yelps of shock. There's no gentle sloping entry here. It's usually a direct step into the invigorating or perhaps shocking cold. The moment you enter, your breath catches in your throat. It's an immediate, full-body jolt, like being doused with a bucket of ice water on a hot summer day, only more sustained. Your skin, still warm from the caldarium, prickles intensely. It's a rush, a sudden awakening for every nerve ending. You might let out a gasp or a quiet exclamation as the cold water envelops you. Some brave souls might even do a few quick laps, their movements quick and purposeful to generate warmth. Most, however, simply immerse themselves for a short, bracing period before scrambling out, dripping and shivering, but feeling undeniably invigorated. This drastic temperature change was believed to have numerous health benefits, from closing the pores that the heat had opened, to strengthening the body and improving circulation. Historians still argue about the precise medical rationale behind this extreme hot and cold therapy, but the Romans swore by it. It's a moment of pure, unadulterated sensation, cutting through any lingering drowsiness. You feel alert, your mind clear, and your body humming with a new kind of energy. You might dry yourself off with a linen towel, or perhaps just let the air do the work, feeling the goosebumps rise on your skin. This final, chilly plunge serves as a refreshing punctuation mark at the end of the intense cleansing ritual. It's like hitting the reset button after a long, arduous process. And with that final shiver, you've completed the core cycle of the Roman bath, emerging not just clean, but feeling utterly revitalized and perhaps a little bit smug about having survived the cold. You probably won't be complaining about lukewarm showers ever again. You've completed the core bathing circuit, the hot, the scrape, the cold. Now, what's next? Well, you've spent a considerable chunk of your afternoon, and frankly, you're probably a little hungry. This is where the Roman public bath complex truly shines as a multifunctional hub. Food wasn't just an afterthought, it was an integral part of the experience. You don't just leave the baths and go home. You eat at the baths, or at least within easy reach of them. Scattered throughout the complex, or immediately outside its main gates, you'd find a variety of vendors. Imagine the equivalent of a modern food court, but with more toga-clad patrons and less plastic. You might grab a simple snack from a papina, a small food stall offering hot sausages, cheese, bread, or even olives. The smell of grilling meat and fresh baked bread often wafted through the air, tempting you after your strenuous cleansing efforts. These weren't gourmet meals, mind you, but hearty, satisfying fare to replenish your energy. You might even see a street vendor hawking roasted chickpeas, a surprisingly popular Roman snack, crunching away on them while still slightly damp from the frigidarium. For those desiring something a little more substantial, there might be slightly more elaborate taverns or eateries attached to the bath complex. Here, you could sit down and enjoy a more relaxed meal, perhaps some fish, lentils, or a simple stew, accompanied by a glass of watered-down wine. This wasn't just about sustenance, it was another opportunity for socialization. You'd see groups of friends gathered around small tables, discussing the day's events, sharing gossip, and perhaps even engaging in a bit of light gambling over their food. Historians still argue about the exact variety and quality of food available at all public baths, as it likely varied greatly depending on the bath size and clientele. One quirky tidbit is that some populi would offer specific dishes rumoured to enhance the bathing experience, though what those might have been is lost to time, perhaps some kind of ancient electrolyte drink, or a detox gruel. Whatever your preference, you wouldn't go hungry. The Roman bath was designed to cater to your every need, from cleanliness to conversation, and yes, even to a rumbling stomach. It's a stark reminder that life in ancient Rome, for all its differences, wasn't so far off from our modern desire for convenience and communal dining. With your stomach now pleasantly full, you might think the Roman bath experience is winding down. But, oh no, not yet. This grand complex is far more than just a place to wash and eat. It's a vibrant hub of entertainment and games. You've seen the serious exercise in the palaestra, but now you'll witness the more leisurely pursuits. Wandering through the various halls and courtyards, you'll encounter Romans engaging in all sorts of amusements. Board games were incredibly popular. You might stumble upon a group intensely focused on a game of ludus latruncularum, a strategic board game similar to checkers or chess. The clack of game pieces, often made of bone or glass, against a wooden or carved stone board, provides a rhythmic backdrop to their animated discussions. Or perhaps you'll see a simpler game of turni lapilli, a Roman tic-tac-toe etched into a convenient marble surface. It's surprisingly competitive, even for a seemingly simple diversion. Gambling, too, was a pervasive pastime. While officially frowned upon in some contexts, the baths provided an informal setting where wagers could be placed on anything from a game of dice to the outcome of a wrestling match you just witnessed. You might see small groups huddled together, dice rattling in their hands, the murmurs of sixes or threes echoing softly. It's not the high-stakes gambling of a modern casino, but the thrill of a small win or the sting of a minor loss is palpable. Historians still argue whether gambling was officially permitted within all bath complexes, or if it was more of an illicit, though tolerated, activity. Beyond structured games, there was also a more informal kind of entertainment: performances. Sometimes musicians might play a lyre or a flute, their melodies adding a different layer to the bath soundscape. Orators might spontaneously begin to deliver speeches, perhaps practicing for an appearance in the forum, or simply attempting to entertain and impress their fellow bathers. You might even catch a comedian performing, trying to elicit laughs from the relaxed crowd with witty observations about Roman life. It's a lively atmosphere, a true microcosm of Roman society, where intellectual discourse could rub shoulders with a casual game of chance. You might even find yourself drawn into a conversation about the latest gladiator fight, or a juicy bit of political gossip. It's clear that the Roman bath was designed to cater to the mind as much as the body, ensuring that boredom was never an option. As you observe the myriad activities unfolding around you, it becomes increasingly clear that the Roman bath complex isn't just about personal hygiene or individual recreation. It's a pulsating social hub, the very heart of Roman community life, and a crucial networking ground. Forget LinkedIn or exclusive clubs. This was the ultimate Roman water cooler moment, extended over several hours. You see senators mingling with merchants, poets conversing with soldiers, and philosophers debating with artisans. Social distinctions, while never entirely absent, seem to soften within these walls. Everyone, regardless of their status, strips down, literally and figuratively, to their shared humanity in the pursuit of cleanliness and leisure. This was the place to catch up on the latest gossip, from political intrigue in the forum to scandalous love affairs among the elite. You overhear snippets of conversations about impending legislation, upcoming chariot races, and the ever-present topic of who's throwing the best dinner party next week. It's a delightful, noisy tapestry of daily life. Beyond casual chatter, the baths were prime territory for business. Deals were struck over a dip in the frigidarium, contracts negotiated while getting a massage, and alliances forged during a game of dice. A merchant might subtly introduce himself to a wealthy patron. A young lawyer might seek advice from an experienced orator, or a patron might gather his clients to discuss their various needs. The relaxed atmosphere combined with the sheer amount of time spent together, fostered a level of intimacy and trust that was hard to achieve elsewhere. Historians still argue whether some bath complexes had designated areas for business transactions, or if it was simply an organic part of the general social flow. It's a place where reputations could be made or broken, where connections were forged, and where the pulse of Roman society was most keenly felt. You might even see a new arrival being introduced to a group, the network expanding right before your eyes. The pervasive hum of conversation, laughter, and the occasional raised voice fills the air, creating a truly unique acoustic experience. It's like a giant, very public living room where everyone is welcome to participate in the grand drama of Roman life. You realize that to understand Roman society, you absolutely must understand the profound significance of its public baths. They were, in essence, the ancient world's ultimate social media platform, but with more steam and less screen time. While the images you've formed so far might be heavily male-dominated, it's important to remember that Roman public baths weren't exclusively for men. Women participated too, though their experience often differed significantly. You won't see them mingling freely in the same pools and rooms at the same time as men in most major public complexes, especially in later periods. Initially, some early public baths might have had mixed bathing, or at least very liberal co-ed access, but this became less common and even frowned upon over time due to moral concerns and societal norms. By the time of the grand imperial baths you're imagining, the system was usually one of two approaches. The most common was separate facilities. Many bath complexes, particularly the larger ones, would have a dedicated section for women, often smaller and less elaborate than the men's wing, but still providing the full range of bathing experiences: apodyterium, tepidarium, caldarium, and frigidarium. You might imagine a parallel universe of quiet chatter and gentle splashing, a more subdued atmosphere than the boisterous male sections. The other approach was separate hours. In some baths, women and men would use the same facilities but at different times of the day. Often, women would have access in the mornings, perhaps earlier, before the main influx of men for their afternoon rituals. This allowed both sexes to utilize the same infrastructure without compromising societal expectations of modesty. You might picture the transition as women's voices fade and men's begin to fill the vast spaces. Historians still argue about the prevalence of mixed bathing throughout Roman history and in different regions, as evidence is sometimes ambiguous. One quirky tidbit: some sources suggest that despite official separation, attendants or even opportunistic individuals might have found ways to blur the lines, leading to occasional scandals or humorous anecdotes. Regardless of the method, Roman women certainly availed themselves of the baths. For them, it was also a crucial social outlet, a place to gather with friends, exchange news, and perhaps even conduct a bit of business. It offered a rare opportunity for women, especially those of higher status, to step outside the confines of their homes and engage with the wider world. So, while your current experience is within the more bustling male areas, envision a quieter, equally important parallel world where Roman women enjoyed their own version of this daily, steamy escape. You've been observing the bathers, the architecture, the social dynamics, but there's an entire, largely unseen workforce that makes this colossal operation run. The sheer scale of Roman public baths, with their constant need for heating, cleaning, water management, and personal services, required an army of people, predominantly slaves. These individuals were the unsung heroes of the Roman bath experience. You wouldn't see them lounging in the caldarium or gambling in the courtyard. Instead, they were the ones hauling wood to fuel the furnaces that heated the water and the hypercaust system. Imagine the back-breaking labour of constantly stoking immense fires, shoveling ash, and ensuring a steady supply of heat to multiple vast rooms. The air in these furnace rooms, often underground, would have been thick with smoke and soot, a stark contrast to the relatively clean air in the bathing chambers. You might hear the clang of shovels and the crackle of burning timber from below. Beyond the furnaces, slaves were responsible for every aspect of maintenance. They cleaned the pools, often scrubbing them by hand, emptied the latrines, and swept the vast marble floors. They brought fresh water to various basins and removed wastewater. Then there were the personal attendants, the unctors who oiled bathers, the stridulators who scraped them, and the elliptae who administered massages. You'd see them moving efficiently through the crowds, always working, always serving. There were also slaves who guarded clothes in the apodyterium, though, as you learned, they weren't always successful. Others ran errands, fetched snacks, or even served as personal trainers in the palaestra. This reliance on slave labour allowed Roman citizens to indulge in their lengthy, elaborate bath rituals without lifting a finger beyond the bare minimum. Historians still argue about the exact number of slaves required to operate a major imperial bath complex, but estimates run into the hundreds, perhaps even 1,000 for the largest ones. One quirky tidbit: some slaves might even have specialized skills, like being particularly adept at massaging specific muscle groups, or having a knack for gossiping discreetly while assisting their patrons. Their lives were undoubtedly arduous, a constant cycle of physical exertion in often hot and uncomfortable conditions. As you relax in the soothing warmth, remember the unseen hands that made this luxury possible, toiling tirelessly just beyond your sight, ensuring your perfect Roman afternoon. Stepping back from the bustling human activity, take a moment to truly appreciate the sheer scale and ingenuity of the Roman bath complex itself. These weren't just glorified swimming pools, they were engineering marvels, testaments to Roman architectural prowess. You stand beneath soaring vaulted ceilings, supported by massive columns, feeling almost insignificant in their shadow. The sheer audacity of building such immense structures, capable of accommodating thousands of people daily, is breathtaking. The Romans employed sophisticated techniques, notably their mastery of concrete, which allowed them to construct vast, open interior spaces without the need for excessive internal supports. Imagine the sheer amount of concrete that went into creating these immense domes and arches that spanned dozens of meters, all without modern construction equipment. The concrete, often faced with beautiful marble or intricate mosaics, provided both structural integrity and aesthetic appeal. You trace the intricate patterns on the floor, imagining the countless hours of labor and artistic skill that went into laying each tiny tessera. The planning was meticulous. These complexes were designed with a logical flow, guiding bathers through the sequence of rooms, from the changing rooms to the warm, then hot, and finally cold baths, often with adjacent exercise grounds, lecture halls, and libraries. The layout wasn't arbitrary, it was a carefully considered path to guide your journey through the bathing ritual. The walls are thick, designed to retain heat in the hot rooms and keep the cold rooms cool. Light pours in through strategically placed windows, illuminating the spaces and creating dramatic effects. Historians still argue whether the aesthetic beauty was purely for pleasure or also served a symbolic function, emphasizing Roman power and sophistication. Even the drainage systems were incredibly advanced. Below your feet, hidden from view, lay an intricate network of pipes and channels designed to manage the immense volumes of water used daily, directing wastewater away efficiently. It's easy to overlook these hidden systems, but without them, the baths would quickly become stagnant and unsanitary. It's a stark reminder that Roman brilliance wasn't just in grand monuments, but in the practical, often unseen infrastructure that supported their daily lives. You can almost hear the ghosts of the architects debating the perfect curve of an arch, or the optimal placement of a drain, striving for both grandeur and utter functionality. It's a silent symphony of stone and engineering. The architectural grandeur you've just admired wouldn't be possible without a fundamental element: water. And not just any water, but a constant, massive supply of fresh, clean water. This brings us to another incredible feat of Roman engineering: the aqueduct systems. You might picture vast stone bridges spanning valleys, carrying rivers of water from distant springs and mountainsides directly into the heart of Roman cities. That's precisely what they did. Imagine the foresight and sheer effort required to survey land, design gradients, and construct miles upon miles of channels, some underground, some elevated on magnificent arches, all to ensure a consistent flow. This wasn't just for drinking or agriculture. A significant portion of this precious water was exclusively dedicated to the public baths. You can almost hear the gentle rush of water through unseen pipes as it fills the various pools and fountains within the complex. These aqueducts weren't just simple conduits, they were complex hydraulic systems, often with sedimentation tanks along the route to filter out impurities before the water reached the city. Once the water arrived at the bath complex, it was distributed through an intricate network of lead pipes and channels. The hot pools received water that had been heated, while the frigidarium pools were supplied directly with cool, fresh aqueduct water. The sheer volume of water consumed daily by a large bathhouse was staggering. It wasn't just the pools. There were also countless fountains, latrines, and washing areas that required a continuous supply. This constant influx also meant a constant outflow, leading to equally sophisticated drainage systems, as you briefly touched upon earlier. Historians still argue about the precise methods used to regulate water pressure and flow within the bathhouses themselves, given the lack of modern pumps. One quirky tidbit: the lead pipes, while effective, are a source of ongoing debate about lead poisoning in Roman society. While lead was known to be toxic, the constant flow of fresh water in the aqueducts and baths likely minimized direct exposure compared to, say, lead-lined wine vessels. Nevertheless, it's a fascinating side note to their otherwise brilliant water management. You realize that the smooth, seemingly effortless operation of the baths was underpinned by an almost unimaginable network of water infrastructure, a hidden testament to Roman logistical genius. It's a true flow state, both literally and figuratively. You felt the intense heat of the caldarium, the soothing warmth of the tepidarium, and perhaps wondered how the Romans managed to maintain such consistent temperatures across vast stone rooms without visible fires or chimneys. The answer lies beneath your very feet, in one of the most ingenious Roman inventions, the hypocaust system. Imagine a raised floor, supported by countless small brick pillars, typically about 2 feet high. Below this raised floor and behind the walls were open spaces, essentially large hollow chambers. Now, imagine a massive furnace, usually located outside the main bathing areas, where slaves tirelessly fed wood and charcoal into roaring fires. The hot air and smoke from these furnaces weren't simply vented into the atmosphere. Instead, they were channeled underneath the raised floors and up through flues, channels, in the walls. As the superheated air circulated through these subfloor and wall chambers, it warmed the tiles of the floor and the masonry of the walls, which in turn radiated heat into the bathing rooms above. It was a remarkably efficient form of central heating, essentially creating a giant warm envelope around the bathing areas. You can almost feel the gentle, pervasive warmth rising from the very ground you stand on, a subtle hum of heat rather than the direct blast of a modern heater. This continuous radiant heat meant that the air in the rooms themselves was warm, not just the water. The genius of the hypocaust lay in its continuous operation and its ability to maintain warmth for extended periods. Once the stones were heated, they would retain that warmth for a long time, even if the furnace fire dipped slightly. Historians still argue about the precise methods used to control the temperature in different rooms, as some required more heat than others. Was it a matter of more or fewer flues, or perhaps adjustable vents? One quirky tidbit: sometimes, if a furnace slave wasn't careful, the smoke could seep into the rooms, leading to unpleasant fumes, but generally the system was designed for clean, indirect heat. It's a testament to Roman engineering that this sophisticated heating system was developed without any modern understanding of thermodynamics. They simply observed, experimented, and perfected a way to deliver luxurious warmth to thousands of people daily. You now realize that the relaxing heat you experienced wasn't magic. It was the product of countless hours of labor and brilliant, unseen design. It truly transformed the bathing experience from a quick dip into a full-body, all-encompassing embrace of warmth. You've spent your afternoon in one of the grand public bath complexes, an awe-inspiring testament to Roman communal life. But it's important to remember that not all baths were created equal, and there was a distinct difference between the sprawling public baths you're experiencing and smaller, often more intimate private baths. The public baths, like the baths of Caracalla or Diocletian, were massive, state-sponsored enterprises. They were open to virtually everyone, often for a very nominal fee, or sometimes even free, thanks to wealthy benefactors or emperors seeking popularity. These were the social epicenters designed for thousands, with multiple pools, exercise grounds, libraries, shops, and all the entertainment you've witnessed. They were a display of imperial power and generosity, a public utility on a grand scale. You can still feel the reverberations of history in their vast, echoing spaces. They were designed to impress, to accommodate crowds, and to cater to every facet of a Roman's leisure time. In contrast, private baths were much smaller, more exclusive affairs. These could be found in large, wealthy private homes, domus, or in grand villas owned by the elite. Imagine a noble Roman's personal spa, perhaps just a few rooms, a small apodyterium, a compact tepidarium, and a private caldarium, or even just a warm tub, possibly a tiny frigidarium plunge pool. These were built for convenience, privacy, and personal luxury, rather than public display or mass accommodation. They would often be heated by smaller, dedicated hypocaust systems, or perhaps even by portable braziers for the less affluent. Historians still argue about the typical size and amenities of private baths, as archaeological evidence is often fragmented compared to the monumental public complexes. One quirky tidbit: some smaller inns or apartment buildings, insulae, might also have had rudimentary communal baths for their residents, acting as a kind of hybrid between public and private. These would have been far less luxurious than the grand imperial baths, but still provided a basic bathing facility. The choice between public and private largely depended on one's social status, wealth, and desire for privacy versus the vibrant, bustling atmosphere of the public spaces. While the grandeur of the public baths might seem overwhelming, the private baths offered a quiet, personalized escape from the clamour. You appreciate the privilege of having experienced the public spectacle, knowing that a different, more subdued bathing world existed for the Roman elite. Beyond the sheer pleasure and social engagement, the Romans firmly believed their elaborate bathing rituals were intrinsically linked to health and well-being. You've experienced the dramatic temperature shifts, the oiling, and the scraping, all of which were thought to have significant medical benefits. The hot water and steam of the caldarium were believed to open the pores, facilitating the expulsion of toxins and impurities from the body through sweat. It was a form of ancient detoxification, a sweat out the bad stuff philosophy. This idea wasn't entirely unfounded. Sweating does indeed help cleanse the skin and regulate body temperature. Then, the scraping with the strigil was not just for dirt removal, but also considered a form of exfoliation, promoting healthy skin cell turnover and stimulating circulation, much like a vigorous modern loofah or body brush. You can still feel the lingering smoothness on your skin, a testament to its effectiveness. The dramatic cold plunge in the frigidarium, while shocking, was seen as invigorating and strengthening. It was thought to close the opened pores, tighten the skin, and stimulate the blood vessels, leading to a robust constitution. This hot-cold therapy, surprisingly similar to modern hydrotherapy or contrast showers, was believed to prevent illness and harden the body against disease. Romans often spoke of the baths as places where the sick could find some relief, or at least temporary comfort. Rudimentary medical treatments were sometimes administered within the bath complex itself. Massage, as you might have experienced with the ellipte, was a common practice, believed to soothe aching muscles, improve flexibility, and aid in recovery from exercise. Herbal oils and poultices were sometimes applied. While not medical clinics in the modern sense, the baths certainly served as a kind of holistic wellness centre. Historians still argue about the true long-term health impact of these practices, given the lack of rigorous scientific understanding at the time. One quirky tidbit. Some Roman doctors even prescribed specific bath routines, recommending certain temperatures or durations for different ailments, almost like a very early form of physical therapy. You feel refreshed, certainly, and can understand why the Romans saw their daily bath as an essential part of maintaining a healthy body and mind. You've indulged your body, satisfied your hunger, and perhaps even made a few social connections. But the Roman bath complex wasn't just for physical rejuvenation, it was also a place for intellectual engagement and philosophical pursuits. It provided a unique atmosphere where the mind could be stimulated just as much as the body. Many larger bath complexes included dedicated libraries, bibliotheci, often filled with scrolls of Greek and Latin literature, history, and philosophy. Imagine strolling from the steamy caldarium into a quiet, cool room lined with shelves, the scent of papyrus and aged wisdom replacing the steam and sweat. You might see individuals poring over a scroll, perhaps a copy of Cicero's orations or Seneca's letters, seeking knowledge or simply enjoying a moment of quiet contemplation. These libraries were often open to the public, providing access to literature that might otherwise be confined to private collections. It's a reminder that Roman culture valued intellectual curiosity alongside physical well-being. Beyond formal libraries, the very atmosphere of the baths lent itself to philosophical discussions and intellectual debates. As you've seen, people would gather in various communal areas: the tepidarium, the palaestra, even sometimes in the quieter corners of the porticos. Here, friends and acquaintances would engage in lively debates about ethics, politics, the nature of the universe, or the latest philosophical trends. A renowned orator might hold court, surrounded by a rapt audience hanging on his every word. It was an environment conducive to informal learning and the exchange of ideas. You might overhear a passionate discussion about the Stoic philosophy of living in harmony with nature, or a witty critique of Epicurean hedonism. This blend of physical and mental stimulation made the baths truly unique. It was a place where the educated elite could both exercise their bodies and sharpen their minds. Historians still argue whether these intellectual pursuits were a primary draw for the average Roman bather, or primarily a pastime for the educated few. One quirky tidbit: some philosophers would even hold impromptu lectures or readings in the bath halls, competing with the general hubbub, believing that the relaxed atmosphere made people more receptive to new ideas. You might find yourself drawn to a particularly animated discussion, losing track of time as the wisdom of the ancients washes over you, just as the water has washed over your skin. Having spent hours immersed in this complex tapestry of Roman life, you start to pick up on the unwritten and sometimes very explicit rules of bath etiquette. It wasn't a free-for-all, despite the sheer number of people and the apparent chaos. There was a certain decorum expected, even in a place where everyone was essentially half naked. One of the most immediate rules, though unspoken, was about personal space. While it was a communal environment, there was a tacit understanding of boundaries, especially in the more intimate areas like the caldarium and frigidarium. You wouldn't linger too close to a stranger or interrupt a private conversation unless invited. Of course, this was often broken, leading to the occasional scuffle or loud complaint. You might hear a bather loudly grumble about someone splashing too much water or hogging a particular bench. Then there was the noise level. As you've gathered, the baths were far from silent, but there was a general expectation of modulated voices, particularly in the more contemplative areas like the libraries or a quieter tepidarium. However, this rule was frequently flouted, as evidenced by Seneca's famous complaints about the cacophony of bath noises, the grunts of exercisers, the shouts of ball players, the piercing calls of hawkers, and the ubiquitous sound of the hair plucker. Imagine trying to meditate amidst that. Historians still argue about how strictly these unwritten rules were enforced, and by whom, as there wasn't a formal bath police patrolling the premises. Cleanliness was another expectation. While the baths were designed to get you clean, you were expected to arrive in a reasonable state, not covered in excessive grime. The ritual of oiling and scraping was for thorough cleansing, not for scrubbing off weeks of accumulated dirt. And, of course, the proper disposal of waste was crucial. The efficient drainage systems depended on bathers not throwing refuse willy-nilly into the pools. One quirky tidbit: there were specific rules, often posted, about not bringing excessive food or drink into the bathing halls themselves, though casual snacking was common in the adjacent areas. Observing these nuances, you begin to understand that even in their pursuit of communal leisure, Romans valued a certain level of order and consideration for their fellow bathers, even if those standards sometimes slipped in the noisy, bustling reality. As you've navigated the various chambers and activities of the Roman bath, one thing has become undeniably clear: this place is loud. It's a symphony of human activity, a cacophony that, surprisingly, becomes part of the immersive experience. You might have noticed it already, but now you tune into the specific elements of this unique Roman soundscape. First, there are the sounds of the palaestra. The rhythmic thud of bodies hitting the dirt during wrestling, the sharp slap of a hand catching a ball, the grunts and shouts of exertion. It's an energetic, almost primal background hum. Then, as you move indoors, the acoustics change. In the vast vaulted chambers of the tepidarium and caldarium, every sound echoes. The splashing of water in the pools is amplified, sounding like small waves breaking on a distant shore. The murmurs of hundreds of conversations blend into a general din, punctuated by bursts of laughter or animated discussion. But there are more specific, sometimes jarring sounds. You hear the distinct metallic scrape of the strigil as it glides across oiled skin, a sound that, once identified, becomes oddly pervasive. Then there's the chatter of bath attendants, calling out services or instructions, and, perhaps most memorably, the cries of vendors hawking their wares, fresh sausages, sweet cakes, their voices cutting through the general noise. One particularly memorable sound, often lamented by Roman writers, was the shrill, painful shriek of the hair plucker. Yes, hair removal was a thing, and it often involved tweezers and considerable discomfort. Imagine trying to relax with that going on nearby. Historians still argue whether the overall noise level was considered bothersome to most Romans, or if it was simply accepted as the natural state of such a vital public space. You also catch the clinking of coins as a small wager is made, the gentle rustle of a scroll being unfurled in the library, or the soft notes of a lyre being played in a quiet corner. The very air vibrates with life. It's a constant, vibrant hum, a testament to the fact that Roman baths were living, breathing entities, filled with the everyday sounds of a bustling society. It's the sound of thousands of people collectively pursuing leisure, health, and social connection, all under one enormous echoing roof. You almost want to plug your ears, but then you realize that the noise is the experience, a direct conduit to the vibrant reality of ancient Rome. Beyond the water and the scraping, Roman bathing involved a sophisticated array of personal care products, particularly perfumes, oils, and cosmetics. As you move through the various stages of the bath, you start to notice the subtle, and sometimes not so subtle, scents that permeate the air. Before and after their dips, Romans would liberally apply olive oil to their skin. This wasn't just for lubrication during the strigiling, it was also a moisturizer, protecting the skin from the drying effects of the hot water and steam. But it wasn't always plain olive oil. Many preferred scented oils infused with flowers like roses or lilies, or spices like cinnamon. You catch faint whiffs of these fragrant concoctions as people pass by, adding a luxurious dimension to the atmosphere. Imagine the Roman equivalent of a high-end essential oil diffuser, but applied directly to the skin. For those who wanted to go a step further, there were perfumes, often sold by vendors within the bath complex or nearby. These weren't the complex, multi-layered perfumes of today, but single-note fragrances derived from natural ingredients. You might smell frankincense, myrrh, or various floral essences. These would be dabbed onto pulse points after the bath, ensuring a pleasant aroma lingered as you returned to the outside world. Cosmetics too played a role, especially for women, but even some men used them. While less common in the main bathing halls, you might see women applying face powders made from lead carbonate, yes, the toxic kind, or chalk to whiten their complexion, or ochre to tint their cheeks. Eyebrows might be darkened with soot, and lips tinted with red ochre or plant dyes. It was about enhancing natural beauty, or at least meeting the Roman standards of aesthetic appeal. Historians still argue about the exact prevalence of male cosmetic use in the baths, beyond simple perfumed oils. One quirky tidbit: some very elaborate cosmetic routines involved layers of different creams and balms applied and then scraped off, almost a mini facial within the bath routine. You realise that the Roman bath was not just about getting clean. It was about preparing the body for social interaction, ensuring you looked and smelled your best for whatever the rest of your day held. It was self-care. Ancient style. You've witnessed the Roman bath at its zenith, a vibrant, indispensable part of daily life. But like all great empires and institutions, the Roman baths eventually faced a period of decline. The glorious era of sprawling imperial complexes, humming with thousands of bathers daily, couldn't last forever. The primary factor in their decline was the fall of the Western Roman Empire itself. As central authority weakened, vast public works, including the aqueducts that supplied the baths with water and the intricate hypercourse systems that heated them, became difficult to maintain. Imagine a massive complex machine, slowly grinding to a halt due to lack of resources, skilled labour and political will. Invading forces, economic instability, and widespread conflict meant that cities struggled to provide basic necessities, let alone maintain luxurious public amenities. Aqueducts were sometimes deliberately cut by invaders to cripple cities, or simply fell into disrepair, making the operation of the baths impossible. Changing social norms and the rise of Christianity also played a role. Early Christian attitudes sometimes viewed public nudity and the mixed-gender socializing prevalent in some baths with disapproval, encouraging more private, modest forms of bathing or even outright asceticism. While not a sudden ban, this cultural shift gradually eroded the bath's central place in communal life. You might imagine the once bustling halls becoming quieter, the crowds thinning, and the sounds of laughter and debate replaced by eerie silence. Historians still argue about the relative importance of these factors, economic collapse versus changing social values, in the ultimate decline of the Grand Baths. By the 5th and 6th centuries CE, many of the colossal public baths in Rome and elsewhere were either abandoned, fell into ruin, or were repurposed for other uses, like fortifications or dwellings. The grand structures you've explored today, once vibrant social hubs, slowly became ghostly skeletons of their former selves. One quirky tidbit. Sometimes, local populations would scavenge the valuable marble and bronze from the decaying baths for new construction, further accelerating their demise. It's a melancholic thought, watching such a magnificent institution fade, but its legacy would endure in subtle ways, echoing through history. Despite their decline, the spirit and influence of the Roman baths didn't vanish entirely. They merely transformed, leaving behind a profound legacy that echoes in our modern world. You might not recognize it immediately, but elements of that ancient Roman experience are still very much with us. Think about the modern spa. The sequence of hot rooms, steam, and cold plunges. It's a direct descendant of the Roman caldarium, tepidarium, and frigidarium. When you relax in a sauna, sweat it out in a steam room, or take a bracing cold shower after a workout, you are in essence reenacting a simplified version of the Roman bathing ritual. The idea of using heat and water for relaxation, detoxification, and health has remained remarkably consistent across millennia. You can almost feel the gentle hum of recognition in the air as you connect these ancient practices to contemporary wellness trends. Beyond individual spas, the concept of public bathing and communal wellness spaces continued, though often in different forms. Turkish hammams, Russian banyas, and Japanese onsen all share a common ancestor in the Roman bath, often incorporating similar rituals of heat, water, and social interaction. While their specific customs and architectures differ, the fundamental idea of a public space dedicated to cleanliness and communal well-being persists. Historians still argue about the extent of direct transmission versus independent innovation in these later bathing cultures. Even less obvious are the architectural influences. The grand, vaulted ceilings and open spaces you've admired in the Roman baths inspired later architects, from Renaissance master builders to modern public space designers. The very idea of a public building designed for both utility and aesthetic grandeur owes a debt to these ancient complexes. One quirky tidbit: the term spa itself is often attributed to the Belgian town of Spa, famous for its mineral springs, but the concept of a healing water place goes straight back to Roman bathing traditions, which often incorporated natural springs. You realize that the boring history of Roman baths isn't just history, it's a living blueprint for how we still seek comfort, cleanliness, and community today, just with slightly fewer togas and less scraping. As the day draws to a close, the grand Roman bath complex begins its gradual winding down. The frenetic energy of the afternoon, once a constant hum of activity, slowly starts to dissipate. You notice the crowds thinning, the boisterous shouts replaced by softer conversations, and the general clamour settling into a more subdued echo. The vendors, who once hawked their wares with gusto, are now packing up their carts, their voices less insistent. The games in the courtyards cease, and the wrestling mats in the palaestra lie empty, perhaps still bearing the indentations of recent struggles. The light filtering through the high windows softens, casting long shadows across the mosaic floors and marble walls. The golden hour paints the vast spaces with a warm, mellow glow, transforming the bustling public utility into something almost serene. You might see a few lingering bathers, perhaps deep in conversation, reluctant to leave the comforting warmth and camaraderie of the place. Slaves, who have toiled tirelessly all day, begin the painstaking process of cleaning. Furnaces are damped down, though some embers will remain to keep a residual warmth for the early morning arrivals. Water levels in the pools are checked, and preparations are made for the next day's deluge. The air starts to cool, losing the intense humidity of the peak bathing hours. You can almost feel the complex exhaling settling down after a long, active day. This gradual close reflects the Roman understanding of time and leisure. The baths weren't just a quick stop. They were a significant portion of the day, a full immersion into social and physical well-being. As the last patrons gather their belongings and step out into the Roman twilight, the grand edifice stands silently, a silent sentinel until the dawn brings renewed life and activity. Historians still argue about the exact closing procedures for baths of different sizes, and whether all bathers were politely or impolitely ushered out at a specific time. One quirky tidbit: it's rumoured that sometimes stragglers would try to hide overnight to avoid the early morning queues, though this was likely rare and highly discouraged. You feel a sense of peaceful completion, mirroring the quiet closure of another Roman day. The memories of steam, laughter, and cool water linger, preparing you for true rest. Now, as the echoes of Roman history begin to fade, and the grand baths recede into the quiet expanse of your mind, allow yourself to drift further. The detailed accounts of daily routines, the scents of olive oil and steam, the clamour of voices, and the cool touch of marble beneath your feet, all of it gently dissolves. The images soften, the sounds become hushed whispers, no longer vibrant but soothing, a distant memory. You've journeyed through an ancient world, a place where life unfolded with a different rhythm, where communal cleansing was a daily spectacle, and where the line between public and private was drawn in unexpected ways. The sheer scale of Roman ambition, from the towering aqueducts to the ingenious hypocausts, settles into your subconscious. You can almost feel the gentle hum of the past, a soft vibration in the air. Let the final impressions be of calm, the gentle ripple of the frigidarium pool, now still and mirror, like in the fading light. The warmth of the tepidarium, a comforting embrace without the intensity of the caldarium. The vast, echoing silence of the apodyterium, after all have departed. The details, the quirky tidbits, the historical debates, they've all played their part, like individual threads woven into a rich tapestry, now slowly unravelling into a single, cohesive sense of peace. There's no need to hold on to every fact or figure. Just let the overall impression settle, like dust motes gently descending in a sunbeam. The Romans understood the power of ritual, of routine, and of dedicating time to both body and soul. You've experienced a slice of that timeless wisdom. Your own journey tonight has mirrored theirs, moving from activity to relaxation, from engagement to quiet contemplation. The weight of the world and of fascinating history lifts. The ancient world is now a soft, pleasant blur, a comforting whisper in the dark. Just breathe slowly, deeply. Let your muscles soften. The sun has set on the Roman baths, and the moon is rising over your own quiet space. All that vibrant energy, all that ancient history, is now settling into the peaceful stillness of memory. Rest deeply. The boring history has done its work.